When we dig below the surface of the 3 Bible readings we talked about this week, we see that these scriptures confront 3 forces that I believe are shaping our current moment: exemption, obedience, and waiting. Taken together, I think you'll see that these 3 things explain why harm persists and why living an exemplary life today means refusing special treatment. It means rejecting blind compliance. And it means taking responsibility now instead of trusting that time or institutions will save us. Welcome to another bonus edition of the MTB Podcast, a segment of the weekly episode that I call Afterthoughts. This is my favorite part of these weekly presentations because it gives me a chance to dig a little deeper into something that came up during the main episode. But let me start by slowing things down for just a moment. Because if there's one thread running through all 3 of the readings this week, it's this: an exemplary life does not ask for exemptions, does not confuse obedience with virtue, and does not wait while harm continues. Let me say that again. An exemplary life does not ask for exemptions, does not confuse obedience with virtue, and does not wait while harm continues. Now that's a hard message. When you really think about it, you might get a little uncomfortable, because this message cuts against almost everything we're being encouraged to do right now, politically, religiously, and culturally. So I want to take some time to pull that apart into 3 movements. Think of this as a 3-act story: exemption, obedience, and waiting. And then we'll talk about what it actually means to live an exemplary life when the stakes are real. So let's dive into that in this episode of Afterthoughts. One of the most important moments in the story of the baptism of Jesus, perhaps the most important moment, is his refusal of an exemption. John didn't want to baptize Jesus. In fact, John thought that Jesus should be baptizing him. But Jesus doesn't say, "I'm above this." Right? He doesn't say, "I'm the Son of God. Different rules apply to me." No, in the story, he steps into the same water as everyone else. That moment matters because exemption culture is the poison running through almost every broken institution we're dealing with today. Exemption culture is what happens when people in power believe the standards they enforce don't apply to them. Exemption culture says, the rules are for you, not for me. Exemption culture is when morality flows downward, but accountability never flows back up. It's when leaders demand sacrifice while insulating themselves from consequences. And we see it everywhere. We see it in churches that preach sexual purity while they're covering up sexual abuse by the leaders. We see it in politicians who talk endlessly about law and order while they're violating all sorts of laws all the time. We see it in economic elites who lecture working people about needing to tighten their belts while they're hoarding obscene amounts of wealth. And here's the thing that's uncomfortable but important to say plainly. This is not accidental. This idea of certain people deserving exemption isn't a personal flaw. It's not a bug in the system. It's a structural feature. It is built in. You see, systems of domination, which is what we're living in right now, systems of domination require exemption in order for them to function the way they're designed. Because the moment leaders are held to the same standards as everyone else, the illusion of superiority disintegrates. That's why the baptism of Jesus story it's quietly radical. It insists that leadership begins at ground level. No special treatment, no spiritual fast pass, certainly no moral loopholes. And that's exactly what modern authoritarian movements reject. They don't just want power, they want immunity. Immunity from law, immunity from ethics. They want immunity from shared responsibility. But an exemplary life? An exemplary life says, no, the rules apply to me first. Now, exemption culture doesn't survive on arrogance alone. It needs cooperation. And the way it gets that cooperation is through obedience. This is where so many people get tripped up, especially in religious contexts. Obedience gets framed as humility. And submission gets framed as faithfulness. And silence? Silence gets framed as, well, that's maturity. Obedience is also not the same thing as solidarity. Solidarity says, I stand with you. Obedience says, I stand below you. And authoritarian systems always prefer obedience because obedience removes moral friction. Think about it. If you're just following orders, you don't have to wrestle with consequences. You don't have to take responsibility. You don't have to ask whether something is fair or humane or just. All you need is to do what you're told. And that obedience removes any moral dilemmas. This is where modern Christianity, especially Christian nationalism, has gone badly off the rails. The obsession with authority, hierarchy, and control has replaced the far more humane idea of shared responsibility. The Seven Mountains Mandate is a perfect example. If you're unfamiliar with that, it's a belief within many evangelical Christian movements that their followers are called to take dominion over 7 key cultural domains: religion, family, education, government, media, arts, and business. And the goal is to make them all expressly Christian, as narrowly defined by those people. It isn't about service. It isn't about repair. It isn't about the common good and human flourishing. It's about domination, about controlling institutions and forcing compliance, forcing obedience. And notice what's missing: accountability, humility, concern for those harmed by the exercise of power. Now, solidarity, on the other hand, is threatening to authoritarian systems. It's threatening to dominionist Christians. Because solidarity asks hard questions. And solidarity insists that leaders live by the same rules they preach. Solidarity says belonging comes with responsibility, not privilege. That's why solidarity keeps getting rebranded as weakness. It's why empathy gets mocked, why fairness is treated like some sort of liability. An exemplary life doesn't mean outsourcing our morality to someone who claims to have authority. An exemplary life refuses blind obedience and chooses to stand with real people in real situations, even when that creates a hell of a lot of tension. Now we get to the part that's potentially hardest to hear, because it implicates many of us. Waiting. Waiting is often framed as patience, wisdom, or restraint. In religious language, it gets spiritualized. Well, it's in God's hands. In political language, it sounds like realism. Let the institutions work. Just prepare for the next election. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Waiting is often just responsibility delayed. History is full of examples where waiting was weaponized by things that might not sound so bad. Well, now is not the time. Be patient. Change takes time. Those phrases have been used to delay civil rights, excuse economic injustice, and normalize suffering. And right now, this is critical, right now, Trump Republicans are counting on the rest of us simply waiting. They are betting that Democrats, moderates, and people of good conscience will continue relying on norms, procedures, and institutions that move slowly, thoughtfully, and methodically by design. They're betting on long court timelines. They're betting on us worrying about decorum. They're betting on us holding on to the idea that the next election will magically fix everything. That's not an accident. That's their strategy. Meanwhile, they are acting now. They are reshaping courts, dismantling safeguards, consolidating power, and eroding democratic norms in real time. Waiting might feel responsible, might feel calm to some people, might even feel safe. But the safety of waiting is an illusion when harm is accelerating. Living an exemplary life in this moment doesn't mean panic or chaos, but it does mean taking action. It means refusing to confuse patience with passivity. It means understanding that our feelings, anger, fear, outrage, they don't change anything unless they turn into movement. Calling elected representatives, supporting people on the front lines, correcting misinformation, having those hard conversations, and withdrawing cooperation from harmful systems. None of that requires perfection, but it does require a little courage. So let me try to bring this all home for us. An exemplary life is not about being morally superior. It's not about being loud or pure or heroic. Living an exemplary life is about refusing the easy outs. No exemptions, no blind obedience, no waiting while others are harmed. Living an exemplary life is about showing up again and again and again, without guarantees, usually without applause, and without pretending someone else is responsible for fixing what's broken. This isn't comfortable work. It's slow, it's messy, and it often goes unnoticed. But if we're honest, waiting hasn't saved us. Obedience hasn't protected us. And exemption has hollowed out every institution that it's touched. So the question isn't whether someone will rise up and lead us out of this. The question is whether enough of us are willing to live an exemplary life right now, while we still can, and while it still matters. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Afterthoughts. If you want to keep up on everything I'm doing, please head over to thecodaproject.com and subscribe to my newsletter. You'll get notifications whenever I publish anything, and I'll also keep you updated on the weekly live streams of Mythologizing the Bible. If you subscribe for free over at The Coda Project, you'll start receiving my publication called The Weekly Compass. This is a brief guide on a single core value. Think of it as a mini lesson plan for personal growth. It's perfect for families, students, and adults because I include discussion questions designed for each age group. As a subscriber, you'll also have access to the Guide to Kitchen Table Activism, which is a detailed resource designed to help you be politically active from your own home. The guide explains why activism is important, the philosophy behind kitchen table activism, and the foundational values it supports, before laying out how to use the tools you have to make your voice heard. It provides tools, tactics, and templates for you to use, and it only takes 15 minutes a week. If you care about our democracy, our country, and our world, then I encourage you to check it out. While you're at it, make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you'll start receiving my newsletter called The Kitchen Table Activist. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, remember to question everything, keep what's good, and live what matters.